feminist celibacy movement 4B is trending in the US after Trump's win.
And I think all women should stop having sex for the next 4 years in protest and protection of your bodies.
I can tell you one thing right now, marriage is the farthest thing from on the table.
And as if that wasn't enough, some women are also cutting their hair in protest.
Minorities, we're so scared of a woman in power that you'd rather cozy up to the white man. If you're a man, I will not be responding to you. If you are a man, I will not be talking to you.
So there's that 4B movement.
Yeah, I mean, I personally, I love the movie. I think it's great. I mean, if you go back through that video, there might be like one halfway decent looking intolerable woman on there, but the ones that like were shaving their heads and the chick in the beginning of the video, like I don't think any man wants to talk to you or date you or marry you or procreate. Like, do us a favor, stop procreating.
Yeah, I mean, agree. It's super telling as far as like these tantrums go, because we're talking women in the masses like joining this movement. I was reading something the other day about how divorces were like at an all-time high this week, with just law firms taken to Reddit and Twitter, just talking about the absurd amount of calls from women trying to divorce their Republican husbands. It's just like it's insanity if you really think about it.
It's I mean, people have been talking about it for years at TDS, man, and it used to just be like a pejorative to throw at people, but it's a real full-blown thing. I mean, to me, it's the level of like narcissism and just pettiness that these women are having, like throwing a tantrum. Who would ever film themselves crying like that over something they know nothing about? They're obviously ignorant to everything. You know what I mean? These women crying, saying like, I might wake up a slave, or I don't have rights anymore. I mean, yeah.
Taking the time out of their day to film that. And speaking of that kind of brings me to my next topic.
In response to all the liberals who are shaving their heads to fight the patriarchy, I just want to make it clear that I have cancer. I'm not stupid.
Oh, at first I thought that was one of the chicks, and I was about to say, like, dude, that's somebody trying to blend in with the 4B movement. That's just
She's like, just so everyone knows, I have cancer. I'm not stupid.
Yeah. She's totally right, completely right. Props to her, because these women are, I mean, this is what happens. This is our generation, man. This is what happens when you give everybody in the class a cupcake, you give everybody a trophy, you tell everybody they're special, and this is what you get. You get adults who think that people give a shit about their crying temper tantrums on social media. And I think, I honestly, I think that I would be willing to bet that 70%, I'm pulling that number out of my ass, but I would be confident saying 70 to 80% of the people that are saying this, they're not actually going to practice this. They're just trying to be a part of the movement and show like, hey, look how much I hate Donald Trump too. Like I'm just as affected as you are. Like I'm hurting too. And it's this victim mentality that has become so synonymous with the left of like, look how oppressed I am and look how badly we're treated, when it's like, you live in the United States of America. The poorest person here has a fucking flat screen TV and a smartphone supercomputer in their pocket, like
attached to their hip all day long. And what does this look like in 2 months from now? There's thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of women now that are going to be shaving their heads, wearing blue bracelets, divorcing their husbands, calling off their weddings, just not dating, just writing off men. And then how far does that go? And just like you said, how long does this last? Like, do they give up in 2 months? Like, then what does that look like? Are we just seeing a bunch of like bald-headed women walking around just like, well, now what? Like, it's like that last one where when the trans movement was going on, and then that one girl who she was trans, went through the full procedure, everything, became a man, and then I don't remember how long exactly it was, but then she posted a video following that where she's like, ever since I became a man, nobody told me how lonely it was to be a man. Nobody gives a shit about you. And she's crying on screen. Full-blown man now, beard, facial hair, everything, full post-op, talking about how she wishes she never did it because nobody cares about men. Is like, what happens with this? Are we talking about the same thing here? Like,
I mean, I think it's all part of the same disease that they have of the mind. You know what I mean? It's like, the left loves to talk about misinformation and disinformation, but they're the biggest perpetrators of the two, in the world. I mean, to tell these kids, one, the trans thing's a whole nother issue that we could talk about, but let's just focus on these women right now. These women believe that like rights are taken away from them. They believe that they're oppressed. They believe that they have it worse than men, when in reality they have it better than anybody in the known world. These American women have it better than anyone. That's if you're white, black, brown, it doesn't matter what you are. If you're living in the United States and you're posting your crying videos on social media, trust me, you're not living in poverty. You're not thinking like, where's my next meal going to come from? You have it pretty good. And I think what it is it's going to lead to, like you said, if they all start shaving their heads, that'd be great, because basically what they're doing, they were all afraid about becoming the Handmaid's Tale becoming a reality. But really, they're taking the Scarlet Letter and making it a reality, and they're shaving their heads and showing us exactly who they are instead of wearing a scarlet A across their shirt. You know what I mean? Show me who you are, because I would rather go ahead and do that, because those good women that may get overlooked for some of those women on the left or whatever that are crazy, are going to find good men, and that's who needs to be procreating. Not these, crybaby little socialist wannabes who have no idea what fascism even actually means.
Yep. Yeah, you're going to see a big shift right now, and you're right that you bring that up, because, with all these people now exiting the dating pool, and you got all these other women that are remaining that are going to be dateable with all these men now who are going to be looking for mates, like, what does that do to, how does that look with children, long-term relationships? Are we going to see divorce rates going down? Are we going to see mental health starting to decline? When you start taking the crazy out of the situation, like, what does that look like? I mean, because at the end of the day, this is insane. This is mental health decline. You want to talk about the mental health issue with men. Is it because men are married to people like this, where they're just, where they're coming out of the woodwork now, where it's like, oh, you're crazy. You're a crazy person. And you've been married to your husband for 6 years, 5 years, 10 years. Like, what is that doing to that man?
Poor man. That poor man.
Yeah. So,
well, not only that, think about it like this, though. Like, let's think about it like this, right? So they're pissed off because, Donald Trump was voted in and men showed up for him, right? And so now what their answer is to that, because their biggest fear is not having reproductive rights, right? But now, on the flip side, because Donald Trump is president, what they're saying is, we're not going to have sex, we're not going to give birth, we're not going to date, and we're not going to get married. Well, then what are you bitching about? You have no chance of having an abortion or getting pregnant. Like, if you're not procreating, what's the problem here? I don't think that you're going to see anything social really stem from it. I think that this is going to be a fad for the next month or two, or maybe 6 months. But I don't think that these women, like I said, 80% of them are going to say it, but they're not going to practice it. They're not going to freaking give up, going out and finding it. These people are crazy. They have to have somebody to show them some kind of affection. They can't buy enough cats.
Yeah. No. And this whole, 4B movement, it's a play off of the South Korean movement, where the women there are like, that are not in America, that are actually going through these tribulations and trials and whatever you want to call it. And it's like, I wonder how they're looking at this now, where it's like, well, wait a minute, what are these bitchy American women doing to our movement? Like, what do you know about being oppressed? What do you know about misogyny, real misogyny? In a country that's outside of America, where, like you said, you're the freest, person on this planet.
Yeah.
From your flat screen TVs to your supercomputer in your pocket, and your right to not only vote, but to, do anything.
Starbucks in the morning. You know what I mean? Like all these things that you rail against, but you buy into. I mean, it's just, look, it's the equivalent, like, let's say anything of the South Korean women, right? Because they probably don't have it just as bad. I don't know what the culture's like. Maybe they do. But, like, look at, how it is in the Middle East and some other countries, right? And these other, impoverished countries. And the women have it really horrible. And I'm sure those women, it's the equivalent of a guy in a wheelchair looking over at a guy who just sprained his ankle. And the guy's just like, oh, my God, can you believe this is the worst ever? And the guy in the wheelchair is like, fuck you, dude. Like, you know what I mean? Like what are you kidding me? Like, I'd give anything to feel a sprained ankle. And I just think that this is one of those things where, it's such a cliche to say it, but tough times make hard men. What is it? Hard men make good times make weak men make tough times. And it goes for, like, the whole of society. And, like, when you have it so good and you are getting in your, you know, your hybrid in the morning and your face, you know, you're recording yourself to all your 7 followers, and you're screaming and you're crying about Donald Trump. It's just like, look how good you have it. You're so privileged to just be able to bitch and complain about, like, you're not, like, again, you're not worried about where your next meal is coming from. You're not worried about being physically abused by your partner or whatever it is. Like, you live in America where you have resources and you can do basically anything you want, including crying into a camera like a freaking toddler.
Yep. Just throwing an absolute tantrum. So no, I think we both agree. I mean, we'll see how this thing pans out, but it'll be interesting to watch as it plays out over the next couple of months. That's for sure. Because going into January, I mean, we're going to see if this same energy is kept. Because, you know, who's to say that as they're starting this movement, you know, there's other women out there that don't start the exact opposite movement. Yeah. You know, we could just see a battle of the same sexes going at it. You know, I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, look at all the women's marches that happened in 2016. You know, everybody wearing those dumbass hats and walking around and acting like their rights were going to be taken away. And they all have the same amount of right. It's the same thing. Like, nobody's rights have been taken away from anybody. You know, like,
no.
It's crazy to me. You won't let me possibly get pregnant and suck that baby out with a medical vacuum. This is atrocious.
That's the argument here. So, you know, we saw white dudes for Harris get flushed out, and now this kind of took its place. So I'm really curious to see how this plays out. But
I think it'll play out. Yeah, I think it'll play out the same way that this election just played out, is going after the wrong thing. They're not learning from their mistakes, man. These people are not learning. They're not listening to the other side that swung. I mean, if you just look at the voting data of how many people like Trump gained from 2020 to 2024, and how if you look at Kamala Harris underperformed across the board. I don't know if you've seen that clip with Jake Tapper. You know, he goes, holy smokes. Like, there's not a single county in the U.S. where she outperformed Joe Biden. So, like, the messaging was wrong. It was all this Nazi stuff, this Hitler stuff, all this stuff. It's played out. It's all played out. And I think that that's what's going to happen. People are just waking up to the crazy, kind of like how COVID woke everybody up to stuff, you know? And I think people are going to wake up and be like, wait a second. Like,
yeah. Well, we'll see. Only time will tell, but this one's definitely going to be interesting. But I'd say the clock's ticking on this one because, you know, once a new office takes over, you know, it's going to be back to work, fixing America, making America healthy again. You know, all the things that we want to see. So there's really just, I'm hoping that there's just not going to be any time or patience for this, so people aren't just going to entertain it. But we'll see how it goes.
I like watching it. Yeah. I hope it thrives.
But no, come on. There's no room for this. There's no room for this in 2025. So,
I mean, I think that's the thing. We stay in our lane. We focus on what we're doing. Go ahead, ladies. Do what you want. We're just going to go ahead and keep making America great.
Yep. That's right. All right. Well, that's it for this one.